8 ways to generate a nonstop flow of content marketing topics. Content marketing is a long-term game, and to make it work, we need good content, but we also need to be able to publish it consistently and continuously to attract and keep attention. It's not enough just to have a piece of great content and put it out there and expect we're going to get a lot of results from that. The fact is, it's a very crowded marketplace. There's tons of information everywhere, and people are being bombarded. So if we aren't consistent, if we aren't constantly reminding people and constantly providing new value, it's very difficult to stand out. And it's even more difficult, even if we attract attention, to be able to keep it to a level where we can build trust, establish a relationship, and create a following and an audience that we can use in our marketing and to, provide our products and services. But if we do content marketing right, we can build an organic following and we can establish a very powerful marketing channel. So the question becomes, how do we come up with enough great content ideas to be able to do it continuously? When you start off, and I remember doing this even with my podcast, in the very beginning, when we're excited about the idea of content marketing, a number of ideas fly right off the top of our head. We can think of ideas for 5, 10, maybe 15, 20 pieces of content. And that's really great, and it's a very good start. But we're going to run through that really quickly. If we're doing something on a daily basis on social media or every other day, it's really only going to last a month or less. And for a lot of people, it's actually even less than that. And if you're posting multiple times a day, then the content won't even last that long. So we need to find a way to actually have a much deeper wellspring of ideas, because we're going to run out of things that we can just think of off the top of our head very, very quickly. And then we're sort of stuck. And if we lose that momentum and we stop posting and we're not consistent and we don't keep creating new content, then all the work we've done is basically wasted. So it's really important that we're able to find a way to do this. And so I'm going to share with you, we're going to talk about 8 effective ways to be able to find content marketing topics in any niche. So no matter what niche we're in, and some of them are going to be easier to find than others, but regardless, it's the same process for all of them. It's the same methods for all of them, and it will work for all of them. The first thing that we want to do is, if we have any kind of customers or we have any prospects already, whether we've built a list, whether we already have followers on social media, podcast listeners, whatever it is, the first thing that we want to do right off the top is we want to listen to our customers' questions and concerns. Anything that people that are already engaged with us are sharing with us as their questions, as their concerns, as things that bother them, or things that interest them, or things they want, or things they're afraid of. Any of those kinds of things are all going to be really valuable, because first off, they're going through the effort of even sharing them with us. So that's fantastic, because they're giving us the answers to the test. But in addition to that, there are people that already believe in us to some extent, already believe in what we do, and had a reason for following us in the first place. So that is our core market. Those are the people we want to make sure that we're engaging with, that we're creating content for, so they stay engaged with us. So we definitely want to be listening to what our customers are saying, our prospects are saying, our followers are saying, and any questions that they're raising, any concerns. We can also solicit these things. So we can reach out and ask what kind of questions they might have. We want to pay attention to what they're asking, and we want to use those questions as inspiration for content. So some things, what we're going to find is there will be repeatable patterns. I've done a lot of webinars in my career. And one of the fascinating things about webinars is at the end, you always end with a question and answer period. Well, what you start to find after you've done enough of these webinars is actually a lot of the questions are the same, regardless of the product or service or whatever you're offering. And there's obviously going to be some different ones and some nuanced ones based on what we're presenting or offering or pitching or whatever, but a lot of them are universal, and they keep coming up over and over and over again. Those are clues to the idea of what is a common thread in terms of an issue, a concern, a desire within our market. And so The same thing applies by listening to what our customers have to say. They're going to share those things. And if it's something that lots of them are sharing, we know that's a common thread. So we know that's a ripe area for creating content. A second thing that we can do is we can survey our email list, our subscribers, our customers in the same way. So as I had mentioned, now we're sort of soliciting the feedback. And we can do this with polls, we can do it with surveys to get our email list to give us ideas directly from our audience. Now, the important thing to know about this is we're excited. We want to create content. So we're all ears and we send out a thing, we have great intentions, but it's very difficult to get people to take the time and effort to go and respond to something. So it's critical, it's vital that we make it as simple and easy and painless and fun as possible. We can incentivize them. It doesn't make the answers any less true if we provide a gift card for, one lucky person who submits it in, or if we give them a discount or a coupon or something like that. Whether it's for everybody or whether it's we pick a couple out of the hat and they get it, doesn't really matter. But the point is we can give an incentive, but we also want to make, if we're doing any polls or surveys, we want to make the answer element of it really simple. What we'd love to do is ask open-ended questions and get this litany of responses that then we can use. The reality of it is it's going to be very difficult to do that. Most often we're going to get people that will respond to yes and no, one-word answers, multiple choice. They aren't likely to write out a lot of things. So we can put one question that says, share your thoughts or comments or anything else you want to share with us. But for the most part, we want to make it really simple. We want to make it point and click simple for them to be able to take the poll, take the survey and respond to us. So that way we maximize the number of responses that we're getting. But this information is very important because it's coming right from our audience. So they're going to share with us what they care about, and we're going to be able to tailor the content we create to that. A third method that we can use is to check relevant subreddits and the question and answer sites like Quora, Quora. If we check Quora and we check subreddits, basically Reddit, but some of the subthreads in there, we can do searches for these things. We can go on Quora, we can go on Reddit, and we can search for various topics. And what happens is we get inserted right into the conversation. So people start asking these questions, and other people will start sounding off and giving answers and giving replies. Now, again, some of these are going to be a lot more popular than others. So depending on the niche that we're in, depending on the industry we're in, we may find more of these or less of these. But it is a really valuable thing to check out because they are actual questions and answers. It's audience feedback from the target audience that we care about. And there is no ulterior motive, right? It's not sponsored by a company. No one is gaining anything. There's no incentive for people in there to be giving responses that are, something somebody else wants to hear. What they're trying to do is be honest in terms of sharing information, experiences, ideas, and thoughts in order to figure things out. I know when I was starting my podcast, one of the things I did was I actually looked at a number of different sources about how the best go about podcasts, what stats look like, what are good stats, what you need to be able to monetize. I wanted to learn everything about it. And one of the great resources for me was actually Reddit and Quora, because I found questions and answers in there that, while they certainly come from one person's perspective, they're really valuable because they highlight sort of one person's experience, and then other people will comment on that or piggyback on that. And that gives us an opportunity to learn what some people feel. The one thing we want to be a little bit careful of with this is we don't want to generalize too much and assume because 6 people are talking about this, that is sort of the law for what it is that we're doing. They don't necessarily speak for everybody, but they certainly will speak for some people. So it's important to incorporate that into what we're doing. But we probably don't want to build an entire content strategy around, 6 comments on a subreddit or a question and 3 answers on a Quora. It is something, though, to take into account and consider because it is really important. What happens in these platforms is that people in each niche whatever they're curious about and whatever they're discussing, they'll be talking about. And what makes it really powerful is they are very niche specific. So you can find topics on whatever niche that you're in, and sometimes you can drill down and get really specific about various things that they're looking for. So the precision and the specificity with those is something that's really, really valuable. The fourth thing that we could do is we could analyze competitors' content. Now, I would kind of put this as a 4A and a 4B. The 4A is we can use sort of analytical tools. We can use SEO tools like SEMrush or MarketMuse, and we can identify topics and keywords that our competitors are performing well on and ones that they aren't, especially long tail keywords. And then we can build a content strategy around all of those keywords. So we can either go after them for the big keywords that they're winning on, or if we think they have too established a presence on that, we can start with the longer tail keywords, which while will have lower search volume, if we could dominate those quickly, we can start to generate some traction, we can start to build our audience, and we can start to get some results from what we're trying to do without waiting, months or years to try to dominate on the big words. But the other thing it's going to do is it's also going to clue us in to what the competitors are actually keying on and focusing on. Now, if they're established, if they're there long before us, that's both a blessing and a curse. On the downside, obviously, that's competition. They're ahead of us. They've got more of an established reputation. They probably have a sales funnel, a pipeline. They have leads. So in a lot of ways, that can be intimidating. At the same time, they've also made all the mistakes. They've spent all the money. They've done the market research. They've narrowed things down to what actually works. So we could look at what we do and how it's differentiated from what they do, and we can sort of take the scope of keywords where there's overlap and use those too, but we can also single out ones that maybe they avoid or don't hit on that apply well for us. And we could carve out our own niche by doing that. Now, the second way, or the 4B, as I was talking about, in terms of analyzing our competitors' content, is look at it. See what content they're actually creating. See what posts that they're making. See what posts that they're making are getting what kind of traction. See the things that they're posting over and over again. Look for themes. Look for common, repeatable topics, common, repeatable questions. Are they doing quotes? Are they doing videos? Are they doing long form, short form? Are they more visual? Which platforms are they on? That can also give us a lot of clues as to where our audience is. If they have a massive Facebook or Meta presence and very little on Instagram, maybe Instagram is not a great place to hunt for our customers. Or maybe it's a missed opportunity. That's something we're going to need to determine. If they have, a big following on LinkedIn, we can see who they follow, who they're following, and we can get a sense. But just looking at the content they produce, what it's all about, the professionalism of it, the tone, the colors, all of the content, and then look at the engagement they're getting, that will give us a lot of clues as to what we can do ourselves in order to A, differentiate ourselves, but B, piggyback and grab some of the audience for ourselves. The fifth thing that we could do is review comments on our social media posts. But I'd expand this and say on ours and on competitors. I think by reviewing comments on social media posts, these tend to be organic. They tend to be done on impulse. And so they don't tend to be curated in the same way that content itself is created. People tend to have a reaction and they post. They have a reaction and they comment. And so those are things that are very valuable because it's giving us the initial response that people are having to content that's being shared. So if it's our own content, we can review the comments and we can see what posts do they like, what things do they dislike, what are they asking about, what additional things could we do, what are the types of things we're posting that are getting the most comments. Because ultimately what we're trying to do is build engagement. So comments aren't bad. Comments can be very good, even if they're controversial, if we know we're getting results. And so it's important to understand what it is we're trying to accomplish, be able to focus on that, and be able to analyze those comments to figure that out, because they can reveal follower interested questions. But by looking at this for our competitors as well and seeing what kind of comments, likes, and shares and all that kind of stuff they're getting is also very valuable, because it helps show us the gaps that they have in their products and services, what their customers are happy about with their service and products and unhappy about, what content they're engaging with the most. And so it's going to give us a lot of the answers to the test for what we're going to want to be able to create for ourselves. And that is very valuable market research. In the old days, market research, you either had to pay somebody to do it, you had to bring in focus groups, or you had to send out, snail mail newsletters and spend thousands of dollars. The internet has democratized all of this stuff to a level where it's incredible how much research you could do essentially for free, but certainly for very, very cheap, and the amount of intelligence you can gather. The key is knowing then what to do with it. Gather all the data, gather all the intel, but then we need to put it into something that's actionable for us so we're able to actually create results based on that. That is really the key when it comes to content marketing and engagement. The sixth thing that we could do is we can examine our existing content and look at our own topics that are getting high engagement or topics that we've covered multiple times. If we are trying to create content and we put something out there and it gets engagement, we're likely to want to create more of that. But even beyond that, if we take the engagement piece out of it, and let's pretend for a minute we have zero following. So we start to create content, and we've decided we're going to create a content marketing strategy, and all we're going to do is blitz the market with great content, and we'll worry about the results we get from it later. What we'll see just by default, by going through our own content, is we'll start to see patterns emerge. We'll start to see topics that we continue to cover over and over. We'll start to see topics that we hit from multiple angles. We'll start to see topics that we drill down on in deeper ways on more occasions than not. Those are clues to things that we feel very comfortable with, confident about, passionate about, have expertise and experience in. And those are all areas where we have an ability to become a thought leader, have an ability to be able to carve out a niche, and have an audience really resonate with us around those particular ideas. So that's really valuable in terms of analyzing even our own content, and it's something that very few people do, because we think, well, we created it, it's already out there, what do we care? We can look at the engagement, but what do we care beyond that? But there's value beyond that if we're willing to do the work to look at it and figure out where those golden nuggets are. The seventh thing we can do is the R word, research. But research in a really simple and fast way. We can research niche industry publications and groups that exist online in our current niche. And the way we can do this is really, really simple. You just type in whatever your niche name is and forum into Google or whatever search engine you prefer, and see if there are any forums, your niche and Facebook group, and see if there are any Facebook groups. We could join these groups, join these forums. We could read what other people are saying, see how much engagement it's getting, see what topics get the most popularity and the most response, see what topics strike a chord with people, and that will all give us ideas for more content. The more engaged we are with our audience, where they hang out, forums, groups, whatever, the more effective we're going to be at creating marketing content that they're going to want to absorb and engage with. You can also do niche and magazine, niche and news, and all of these things will pop up with ideas for what is popular, what's trending, because the fact is search engines want to give us what's the most trending and popular topics right now. So we can do this on social media sites as well, but even in Google, we're going to be able to find a number of resources by doing that are going to lead us to the topics and the gaps in those topics that we could potentially fill with our content. We can also work with influencers in our niche. Influencers have their finger on the pulse of what our market is. So the key is to find influencers that align with our market. We don't just want an influencer that has sort of some a little bit overlap. We want someone who nails our audience. If there's influencers out there, even if they're micro influencers, if they have our audience and we know that our audience respects what they have to say, we can connect with them and we can figure out what are they posting. What's the tone? What's the method they're using? How often do they post? When do they post? Do they post in questions, or do they post open-ended things, or do they post facts? What types of content are they using? Is it video? Is it audio? Is it images? Is it text? They're going to have a pulse on what's relevant to our target audience. That's how they became an influencer in the first place. And that was actually the 8th method. And then the 9th method, so you're getting a bonus method, is to use keyword research tools to find related topics and questions people are searching for in our industry, right? If we just do keyword searches, and there are a bunch of free keyword tools out there, or tools you could sign up for and get a free trial where you could do a bunch of searches, and it will spit out a bunch of related keywords and sometimes even questions, right? It'll even give us questions that people are asking in those various niches about those various topics. So all of those things are very valuable. And we want to remember that when we're doing this, the idea is to gather that intel. But when we go to create our actual content, we want to remember to tailor our content to our specific audience and their end business goals. By consistently creating valuable targeted content, we can establish authority in our niche, and we can attract the right audience, which is ultimately what we want. So the takeaway here is that content marketing can be a great way to establish authority, connect with our audience, and build a following. But to make it work, we need to be consistent. The challenge is finding enough topics that are important to our audience, and by using these 9 methods, we can create a continuous flow of great ideas for content marketing.